It appears that things are beginning to accelerate. Donald Trump has just come out not only as pro-Bitcoin, as he did recently a couple weeks ago, but now he actually wants America to mine all of the remaining Bitcoin and use America's energy to do that. We have an ex-president and a potentially, again, next president talking about Bitcoin this openly with this much power behind number go up. Bitcoin's price could be accelerating from here. Now, where am I? I'm currently in BTC Prague, Prague in the Czech Republic, as probably most of you watching know. There is an awesome event going on the next 3 days here in Prague. It's going to be an absolutely wonderful event, but I'm going to take a few minutes out of my time here and try to explain what's going on. What is this news that Donald Trump has been talking about, and where could we be going from here, both for Bitcoin mining as an industry in general, as well as number go up stuff. So without further ado, I have a little slideshow here to talk about this kind of thing. Now, I have had to talk about this slideshow before, but I've not actually posted the slides in the video because I'm a technical doof. So without further ado, let's talk about what's going on here. I'm going to talk about Donald Trump and what exactly he said, why it matters to you. And also, I'm going to talk about two other people that have not directly commented on this event yet, but have very relevant points to this event. Jason Lowry of the United States Space Force, as well as Safety the Moose, one of the most famous economists in Bitcoin. So, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin, $100 million kind of stuff, right? Which, am I saying Bitcoin $100 million next week? Absolutely not. But nation states adopting Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin on a national hash force is the kind of thing that takes Bitcoin to $1 million, right? In the same way that FASB accounting rules is the kind of major approval to the accounting system of America's tax law that could potentially take Bitcoin to $5 billion, as Michael Saylor has described. This kind of idea of nation states competing in a form of soft war, competing against each other for more hash, that's the kind of thing that over the long term could take Bitcoin to tens of millions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. So let's get into it. First of all, please subscribe. Please like the video. I work really hard on these videos. Obviously, I'm here in Europe filming for these videos. I don't really make that much money, but they are fun to do, and I really do enjoy it. And they are, it's a really awesome time to hang out with people. I had a wonderful dinner last night in Prague, and tomorrow night I'm having dinner with Sailor, and we're doing lots of cool content and videos when we're here in Prague. So if you want to see that, please subscribe to this video, right? If you want to subscribe to see what my thoughts are in talking with Sailor for a couple hours after this news today, you should subscribe and click a like button, all that wonderful stuff. So let's get back to basics. What did Donald Trump say? If you're watching this video, you probably know, but I'll back up and answer that. So on the right here is a tweet by Bitcoin Magazine saying, just in, Donald Trump said that we want all the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA. This is a tweet or post that Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social. He said, vote for Trump. Bitcoin mining may be our last line of defense against central bank digital currency. Biden's hatred of Bitcoin only helps China, Russia, and the radical communist left. We want all of the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA. It will help the US be energy dominant. Or if you want to use Trump's voice, it will help the US be energy dominant. BitcoinMagazine.com/culture. That's a pretty big deal. We have now an ex-president and the undoubtedly most controversial ex-president in recent American history being pro-Bitcoin. This is surely going to turn heads. This is surely going to get lots of people in mainstream media upset. This is surely going to get lots of people in the Bitcoin space very, very excited, as you probably are too. Okay, this is what he said. This is what he seems to be doing. There are many pictures circulating Reddit and Twitter and other social media platforms this morning of Donald Trump having met with 3 of the 5 largest mining companies in the world, because they're Americans. And we could very well be looking at, if Donald Trump is elected, which is a possibility, that it is possible that he has pro-Bitcoin policies. And if he has pro-Bitcoin policies, it is possible he follows through on those. And I'll say a quick caveat. Donald Trump is a very controversial figure. Am I endorsing him politically? No, not necessarily. There are many things Donald Trump has done that I don't agree with. Obviously, many of us lived through 2020. Most of us remember the stimulus that Donald Trump passed, the trillions of dollars that passed under Donald Trump's administration, and all of the COVID lockdowns and pandemic lockdowns that many people watching this video probably disagree with. It's important to remember those things happened under Donald Trump's presidency. Does that mean you should trust Donald Trump? Personally, I do not trust Donald Trump. Just because Donald Trump makes a promise does not mean he's going to follow through in the promise. I'm saying this to get out of the way because a lot of people watching this video, probably a lot of hated comments, are going to say that I'm blindly supporting Trump and trusting Trump. No, I do not trust Trump. But even if Trump backs down on his promise, even if Trump is not elected, this is really important because is changing the narrative. This is the most powerful person in the world right now, frankly. I think in many ways he's more powerful than the current US president because he has a massive, massive following that will follow him pretty much indefinitely into anything. He is one of the most, he is the most powerful political willed person in the world with the biggest political following. And he has pretty clearly come out in favor of Bitcoin. And keep in mind, a mere 2 years ago, Donald Trump hated Bitcoin. He was pro the US dollar. He hated and did not like Bitcoin. However, now, about 6 months ago, he seemed to be open to Bitcoin. About 3 weeks ago, he came out and talked about freeing Ross Ulbricht and being more Bitcoin curious. And now it seems like he is overtly out front, understanding Bitcoin is pro-America money. Okay, so this is what we're looking at here, the tweet. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what he has also promised. He's also promised of freeing Ross Ulbricht. If you're not free or aware of who Ross Ulbricht is a guy from 2011 in the Silk Road days who set up one of the very first Bitcoin platforms and exchanges, otherwise known as the Silk Road. This platform was used for a lot of nonviolent criminal uses, such as marijuana and such as other substances. Ross Ulbricht and many other people were arrested for that. And Ross Ulbricht is very famous in the Bitcoin community for being one of these pioneers for Bitcoin, but then also being in prison for it. Okay, and for context, Ross Ulbricht was a first-time offender. He was convicted on all counts, 7 nonviolent charges, and he was sentenced to double life in prison plus 40 years without parole and a maximum security penitentiary. He does not qualify for days off sentence with good conduct. He does not qualify for days off sentence for participating in programs. Okay, his projected time in prison is life. Okay, Donald Trump has come out and said that he would free Ross Ulbricht if he were to become president. Okay, and again, Ross Ulbricht is also controversial controversial figure. However, we have to keep in mind disparity in punishment of Silk Road defendants. There are a lot of people that were sentenced in Silk Road with a massive amount of disparity, anywhere from 3 years, 8 months, 13.5 years, and Ross Ulbricht is sentenced for life. Now, a lot of people ask, Luke, why are you talking about Ross Ulbricht? Why is Donald Trump talking about Ross Ulbricht? Why is he important to this? He's important to this because ultimately, if Ross can be imprisoned without, many would say, fair trial, and without, many would say, reason, then it can happen to anyone else. Now, why is he in there in the first place? Surely he would be put in there if he did bad things. Well, one could say perhaps he did bad things. However, clearly there's a disparity in punishment. And in my personal belief, I think there's way more to that can of worms than probably I want to say here on YouTube. But whatever case, I do believe that the people that put Ross in prison also were embedded in a lot of other government controversies. And so pulling on that can of worms opens up an entirely new can of worms. And so it's really important that whatever the case, whether Donald Trump's elected or not, that we find a way to make sure that all people in the United States, including Julian Assange, including Ross Ulbricht, including dozens of other people right now that are being imprisoned basically publicly without the ability to communicate to the outside world, besides a few tweets here and there, are able to have due process and able to actually be under the law. So Donald Trump at first went to the Libertarian conference a couple of weeks ago and mentioned Ross Ulbricht's name, and he mentioned self-custody, which is really, really interesting that you had an ex-president mentioning Ross Ulbricht and self-custody, two very things that are near and dear to many libertarian Bitcoin hearts. And by the way, I've met Ross Ulbricht's mom. There is an event in August coming up. If you want to be a part of that event in August, you want to meet Ross Ulbricht's mom, you want to meet other people from the Silk Road days, you should subscribe and stay in tune for that because there's a lot of really cool stuff coming up. So self-custody is, like I said, what Donald Trump mentioned real quick. Yes, self-custody is really important. If you do not take self-custody, this is your wake-up call. You want to have the Bitcoin number go up stuff, but you're not taking responsibility for your Bitcoin, right? If we have nation states beginning hashing for Bitcoin, we're going to have very, very dramatic upside moves in Bitcoin's price. That's just how it's going to work. If you have more energy chasing fewer coins, of course, price is going to go up. And if you're not taking self-custody, you're exposing yourself to all the risks, okay? Let me give a little tiny metaphor here real quick. And yes, we'll get to more number go up stuff in just a moment. You have the sinking island that is political currency, fiat currency. You have the bedrock that is Bitcoin. A Bitcoin exchange or Bitcoin ETF is the bridge going from one to the other. And if your Bitcoin is sitting on a bridge or on an ETF, your Bitcoin is sitting on that bridge. And what happens if the sand island sinks into the ocean, the bridge collapses, your Bitcoin's worthless. What happens if somebody else lights a bunch of TNT and blows up the bridge? Your Bitcoin's gone. What's my point in that metaphor? If you have Bitcoin on an exchange and the fiat currency system declines significantly, your Bitcoin's gone because they're going to take your Bitcoin and you don't own actual Bitcoin. Okay. And even if it doesn't collapse, your Bitcoin's on the exchange and the government could 6102 and take that Bitcoin at any time. They did it with gold. They've done it with real estate. They will do it again with Bitcoin. They even did it with alcohol and prohibition. Okay. There's nothing stopping the government from doing it. Oh, but regulations and laws and everything else like that. Yeah, sure. But who makes the laws? Who makes the regulations? And if there's enough economic incentive for them to flip the switch and take it, they are definitely going to. So if you own Bitcoin on exchange or in an ETF, you are taking all of the risk of the fiat currency system with extra risk. It is better to own bonds than Bitcoin in counterparty risk, which I know is controversial, but at least with the bonds, they're going to print themselves out. Okay, with the Bitcoin, they're not going to do that, right? They'll just take it, they'll give you a convertible, and then they'll send price to the moon, right? That's not what would happen with these other things, right? So please, 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 wherever you're buying Bitcoin, please be taking self-custody. If you need help with multi-sig self-custody, you know where to find me, link in description. But whatever you do, just do it. Get your coins in self-custody. Even Donald Trump now is talking about self-custody. Do I actually believe he owns Bitcoin in self-custody? I'm very doubtful. Does he actually understand Bitcoin self-custody? I'm extremely doubtful. But the two little words, self-custody, are getting into the political vernacular. Okay, CBDCs. Donald Trump is talking a lot about CBDCs. What are CBDCs? CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. Donald Trump is clearly very anti-CBDC based on his tweets and based on his words. However, it's important to note, in action, he is actually way more aligned with the CBDC narrative than most other people in the world. Okay, this picture here on the screen you're watching, or this picture on the screen you see, is that of the blank stimmy checks from 2020. You remember 2020 when people got stimmy checks, right? People got the $1,200, $1,800, whatever dollar stimmy checks in the United States. Okay, that is essentially what a CBDC is, except a CBDC is not paper that's mailed to you. A CBDC is something that is digital and mass distributed to everyone. It's a token that's given to everyone, right? That is what a CBDC is. And I would argue in many ways, we are already there. Okay, if you're watching this video and you're in Canada, you lost your jobs because you did not take the vaccine. You were censored because you did not take the vaccine. Okay, in many cases, people were threatened or having their children threatened from being taken away from their parents based on not having the vaccine. Okay, when people did a non-violent peaceful protest in Canada, bank accounts were frozen. Okay, the hallmarks of a CBDC are essentially already here. It's my personal belief that politicians, including Donald Trump, are dangling a fear of a CBDC in front of you, scaring you about a potential thing that doesn't exist yet, to distract you from the fact that it's already here. Politicians are distracting you from the fact that CBDCs, in effect, are already here. We already have been mass distributing stimmy checks and helicopter money to the populations, and depending on your ethnicity or your religion or your tax standing or what job you have, depending on your personal metrics and your personal credit score, let's say, you get more money or less money. Okay, CBDCs are already here. Granted, do I think Donald Trump understands that he's been a part of that? I don't know, maybe not. But it's important to know these things. Okay, if you think that CBDCs and central bank digital currencies, aka central bank digital currencies, are fear mongering, my encouragement to you is to keep in mind they're really not. We're really already there. Okay, I'm currently in Europe, like I said, in Prague. CBDC is much more of a conversation here because here in Europe, it is illegal to have cash transactions over certain dollar or certain euro amounts, right? So, in fact, people are already forced to being digital, right? And if you're being concerned with Bitcoin, is that it's digital, it can be turned off. My friend, either way, you're going to be using digital money. Either you're going to be using digital money created by the state, or you're going to be using digital money created by electricity, which is Bitcoin. Your choice is already there. You are already digital. Most cash is already digital. Okay, most of your savings is already digital. It's in your bank. It's not in your wallet, or it's not under your bed in actual dollar bills. Okay, that's the point I'm wanting to make if we're going to be talking about Donald Trump and CBDCs. Okay, and again, I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again real quick. Should we trust Trump? I personally do not trust Donald Trump. Am I very excited by Donald Trump's movements to support Bitcoin? Yes, I think it's very compelling. I think it's very interesting. I do think it's going to start and continue to accelerate the game theory of Bitcoin. Does that mean that we should trust Trump? No, I do not personally trust Trump. Does that mean that Trump will do these things if he gets elected? No, it does not. Does that mean that Donald Trump will do these things properly if he gets elected? No, it does not. Does that mean that if Donald Trump does these things when he's elected, and that means that it actually ends up being bad for Bitcoin, it's some sort of psyop or some sort of inside attack? Is that possible? Yes, absolutely. Whatever the case, we should not trust Donald Trump, but at the same time recognize that the most powerful political figure in the world talking about something that is eventually going to take Bitcoin to tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars per coin in purchasing power, That is a huge part of game theory. That's why I have a little chessboard up here. Okay, this is game theory in action. This is stuff that is happening now. This is going to take years to unfold, but it's beginning now. Okay, now here's an excellent question that was asked. What series of events has to happen to make Bitcoin the world reserve currency? This is a question someone asked based on the news of Donald Trump talking about Ross Ulbricht and self-custody. And Safety Namus, again, economist talking about Bitcoin, is talking about the price in regards to that as it becoming a fiat reserve currency, right? This is what Safety says. He says its price needs to keep going up. The higher the price, the bigger the market cap, and the more liquidity, therefore. And so the more it is used as money, the higher the price goes. And if Bitcoin is over $1.5 million, it's bigger than the U.S. Treasury market. Okay, the U.S. Treasury market is gargantuan. Okay, and a Bitcoin at $1.5 million is larger than the U.S. Treasury market. Okay, now $1.5 million per Bitcoin is a significant increase. Okay, it's an increase of about 18, 20x or so, right? It's a major increase. However, an 18 or 20x is not nearly as absurd as people think. Okay, yes, it takes a lot of money to get there. However, market cap is downstream of price, and price is set at the margins. And this is what people don't understand. Okay, the NASDAQ, okay, popular American index, the NASDAQ is up by 10x since 2009 at the Great Financial Crisis. Okay, think about that. The NASDAQ is up 10x. Why is it up 10x? Because market cap is downstream of price, and price is set at the margins. What are people doing with the NASDAQ? They're smash buying the NASDAQ continuously in their retirement funds. And the NASDAQ is going up and up and up because we have more and more capital in nominal terms as we print more dollars, chasing a smaller and smaller amount of the remaining stock on the stock index, right? And remaining amount of stock in the NASDAQ. Okay, if the NASDAQ can do a 10x, one of the largest stock indexes in the world, can do a 10x from 2009, when in real terms, it's flat because of USD debasement. The stock market is flat and has been flat since the Great Financial Crisis. We have not, in real terms, improved significantly since the Great Financial Crisis. If the NASDAQ can do that, Bitcoin could easily do a 20x because we have more currency in front of us. It is a more finite stock of remaining remaining units to be bought, and we're going to have way more demand. Okay, Bitcoin right now is only a 20x away from being larger than the U.S. Treasury market, and we have literally a 500x of adoption in front of us. Okay, we are not even a third of 1% of global adoption, right? Only a couple million people in the world are Bitcoin enthusiasts or Bitcoin holders or Bitcoin fans, right? I mean, and that is true. Okay, people that say 80 million Bitcoin people are users, right? That's not true. Okay, I think one of the reasons why Donald Trump is becoming this openly pro-Bitcoin is because Donald Trump and Donald Trump's advisors think and believe the Coinbase surveys of Americans that say 50 billion Americans own crypto. It's like, no, they don't. No, they don't. Yeah, maybe they own $5 of XRP on Coinbase because they're gambling degenerates, but actual Bitcoin holders, there's only a couple million. Okay, there are only 4 million addresses in Bitcoin's network holding over 0.1 Bitcoin, 1/10 of a Bitcoin or 10 million sats, 4 million addresses, not people, addresses. And the average Bitcoin, or at least the average one that I know, and hopefully you, if you have self-custody, has many, if not dozens, of different addresses holding a various amount of amounts, right? Okay, so even if there's only an average of 2 addresses per Bitcoin, that's only 2 million wallets that hold more than 0.1 Bitcoin. Okay, I am highly skeptical we have 2 million Bitcoiners today. In fact, I'm skeptical we even have 1.5 million. I think a million or less is really what we're looking at. So my point in saying that is that Bitcoin going to $1.5 million to the Treasury market is only a 20x from here. And a 20x from today is, let's say, 20 to 30 million people. And that would still be 5.32 billion adults in the world that have not gotten Bitcoin compared to the 5.36 billion adults in the world total. Okay, a 20x in adoption for Bitcoin is literally a tiny move on the global amount of adults. And yet that multiplier of adopters coming into Bitcoin probably is going to have an exponential price on Bitcoin, right? If you have 20 times the users coming into a network, you're not just getting a 20x in value on a one-to-one relation. Okay, Metcalfe's law, exponentially more people that come into the network, the more hyperbolic the price comes. Maybe we have a 20x in users the next 8 years or 10 years or so, but it's actually a 50x in price, or it's actually a 30x in price in real terms. Plus, oh, by the way, we'll print, we'll double the number of dollars in the next 10 years or whatever. Okay. Again, you are so early. You don't understand how bullish this is. Going from 1 million to 20 million users perhaps takes us to $1.5 million a coin. But let's say actually it's additive and exponential in a Metcalfe law, form, right? So really, we're not going to 1.5 million. We're going to, let's say, $2.5 million per coin. Oh, and then by the way, over the next 8 years, in that time that adoptions happen, we've printed another whatever $40 trillion or something like that, right? Which is entirely within the realm of possibility. Well, that would take Bitcoin to $3, $4, $5 million. Okay, people, people think that a $5 million Bitcoin is hopium nonsense. Okay, but combine those factors together. We're always printing more political currency units. Metcalfe's law remains true. Gresham's law remains true. It doesn't matter if you want to fight it or dispute it. It was true at the internet, and it's going to be true today, right? And also, we're at tiny adoption. So just with minimal increases in adoption and a minimal, very conservative Metcalfe's law factor in, okay, and just with a very minimal and conservative continuing line of political currency debasement, we're looking at multiple millions of dollars per coin that is already larger than the U.S. Treasury market with barely a couple percent of global Bitcoin adoption. Okay, and that's something people will criticize me with saying is that, Luke, how can you possibly say and believe and sit here with a straight face saying Bitcoin is still going to be early at multiple $1 million per coin? Okay, that's already larger than the U.S. Treasury market. Okay, that's the whole addressable market, right? Wrong. Okay, let's get into why. It is because gunpowder is not an option. Okay, this is something that Safety in the Moose talks about in the video, linked in the video or in the slide here. Okay, that gunpowder is not an option. Okay, if you are in a civilization before gunpowder, what do you have? You have chariots, you have horses, you have bows, you have arrows, you have spears. That's the kind of world you're in. Then someone comes along and invents gunpowder. For the first 700 years, gunpowder was used as medicine, fun fact. And then people finally realized, oh, wow, you can blow this up if you light it on fire. And we can use that to blow up our enemies. Oh, wow, great, let's use it. So for 700 years, gunpowder was misunderstood. Then finally it was adopted. And pricing the gunpowder era in terms of the bow and arrow and chariot era is inherently impossible. Gunpowder is a way bigger idea than the bow and arrow. Now, why is that? Gunpowder is not an option compared to the chariot and compared to the spear because gunpowder channels energy better. Okay, I am currently in an apartment here in Prague using way more energy than the richest empires and kings of dynasties of the ancient world, right? Okay, I've got a microwave over there. I've got a stove. I've got at least a dozen light bulbs or so. I flew over here on a plane. Okay, I have supercomputers in my pocket that are charging with cameras better than literally any camera from the 19th and early 20th century. Okay, I, a pleb, just like all of you, I'm using more energy than kings and billionaires and former tyrants of the ancient world, right? As technology progresses, we are upgrading to higher levels of technology, right? It's impossible to explain a light bulb to the era that they were using candles because the light bulb uses so much more energy than they are capable of. They can't possibly understand it, right? And that is what we're looking at with Bitcoin, okay? We are currently in the monetary ancient world of the US Treasury market and the US dollar, where all of those fiat assets together is worth this much. Bitcoin's coming along. Bitcoin says, you are the arrows, you are the chariots, you are the spears. I can channel more energy. I can do everything more efficiently than you. The dollar, you are a horrible store of value. You're an okay medium of exchange. Okay medium of exchange. And you're a pretty awful unit of account. I'm Bitcoin. I'm coming along. I'm a perfect store of value. I'm a perfect medium of exchange. And I'm a perfect unit of account. Oh, and by the way, I can integrate all of the companies of finance on top of myself, right? The fiat world has to have Wall Street and all these banks and all these institutions be separate, right? And it's just complete mess, right? Bitcoin comes along and says, I can do everything you can do, except literally 1,000,000 times better. And I can service literally 10 times the people for literally 1,000 times longer than you can, because you're going to lose 99% of your value every 100 years because the dollar has lost 99% of its value in the last 100 years alone. So Bitcoin comes along and says, I'm better than you in every way, and it's going to be worth more than that, right? The military that channels gunpowder in the form of cannons and muskets wields more energy and wields more power than the one that doesn't. And so that is worth more in terms of the former one, right? And so this is how I can sit here and say that a $1.5 million Bitcoin is not bullish enough. Yes, that is really bullish because that's larger than the Treasury market. However, it is not nearly bullish enough because Bitcoin's entire adjustable market is not the US Treasury market. It is significantly bigger. This is why Bitcoin is a way better quote unquote investment than any stock on the stock market. Okay, any stock in the stock market, its maximum addressable market is its specific technological sector. Bitcoin's entire addressable market is all of the technological sectors and 10xing all of the technological sectors, especially when you price it in terms of Bitcoin. And as a side note, this is why hyperinflation doesn't particularly concern me in the long term. Yes, it is a major concern of mine, don't get me wrong, but eventually Bitcoin's market is going to be so much larger than that of the fiat system that when the fiat system does eventually hyperinflate and collapse, because the fiat system will hyperinflate and collapse, okay, that's a mathematical fact. It has to do that because it is inherently fraudulent, okay, and fraud cannot continue forever. That is a fact, okay? The dollar is eventually going to go away. Maybe that's 1,000 years from now, maybe that's 10 years from now, but it is going to go away. That is a fact. And so my point is that hopefully Bitcoin grows so much in the next couple of decades that when the fiat empire collapses, then it's irrelevant, right? Okay, most people do not cry when Kodak, Barnes & Noble, Sears, or many other companies of the pre-internet era went away. Why? Because in the late 1990s or in the early 1990s, non-internet was the vast majority of the economy, right? Then the internet comes along. People, what is internet? What is this? What is this? Eventually, it eclipses that of the pre-internet era, and then these continue to fade away. And when they're completely gone, distant, everyone forgets they went away, right? Most people didn't cry when when bookstores and all these things from the ancient world faded away because they were already in the new world. And that's probably what we're going to be looking at Bitcoin too. My guess is that over the next decade or couple decades, we're going to see Bitcoin grow so much that when fiat does eventually collapse, hopefully, I pray, it does not mean complete societal chaos because people have already transitioned, okay? And this is really important. This gets exactly back to gunpowder's not option. This is why when a president of the United States goes out there and says, I am pro gunpowder, that's why it's a really big deal. Because if you are in the bow and arrow era, and a president is saying, I like gunpowder self-custody, gunpowder is important for America's future energy and military strength, blah, 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 blah. You got to really pay attention. Even if he doesn't understand gunpowder, even if he doesn't understand the canon, even if he's not actually truly gunpowder, he's just saying it for perceived voting influence, it is still a really big deal. Okay, now let's talk about Jason Lowry. Yay, another controversial figure, right? Donald Trump, Ross Ulbricht, Safety Nimbus, and Jason Lowry. Wow, I'm really talking about a lot of controversial people here. But who is Jason Lowry? For the people that don't know, Jason Lowry is the primary Bitcoin advocate in the United States Space Force down in Florida. I've never done a podcast with Jason Lowry. However, I've talked a good bit with Jason Lowry in private over DM because he cannot talk about it publicly. When Jason is allowed to talk about it publicly, I'm happy to have him on. A lot of people were calling him a spook and calling him a liar 8 months ago when when the Pentagon, the DoD, ordered him to take down his book, Soft War on Bitcoin. He was ordered to take his book down off of Amazon to stop selling it. And he told people before it was taken down, he was eventually going to be taken down. He was taken down. He was taken down sooner than they thought he was going to. And he was taken down, and a lot of people said, oh, he's lying. That's never happened, blah, blah, blah. He's just trying to sell more copies, whatever. People, it looks like it was real. Looks like it happened. Looks like that these institutions are beginning to understand the importance, okay? If you keep up to date with Jason's post, he has been very clear via cryptic speech that that things are happening, and things do seem to be happening, okay? So this is a reaction of what is happening here, and talking about a $100 million Bitcoin. This is what Jason said. Once we moved past the fear of government banning you-know-what, Bitcoin, and are comfortable calling it a weapon/defense system, the Second Amendment will come into play. But the real excitement begins when everyone simultaneously realizes its importance for national security. In parentheses, think 100 million per coin. Someone asks the time frame, and Jason says most of us will live to see it. I do believe that. Okay, now what on earth is he talking about? If you're not familiar with this idea, it is the idea that Bitcoin is way more than money. Okay, why do we go to war? I'm currently in Prague, as described. Okay, Prague is one of the few cities in Europe that was not completely obliterated and bombed out of existence during World War II in the communist era, right? What is war? Why do nations go to war? When nations go to war and they bomb each other, they kill each other, they take over each other because it is a fight for energy. World peace is frankly a pipe dream because world peace depends on a world without predators, and there are always going to be predators in the world, okay? We are all about channeling energy. We are all about dominating energy. We go to war because we want the resources of another nation. We want their oil. We want their people. We want their culture. We want their army. We want their weapons. We want their food. We want their water. Or we want their ability to print political currency out of thin air and be able to distribute it onto others. Okay. Kinetic war, aka with violence and bombs, is a fight over resources. It is a fight over energy. Where is the energy? Who controls the energy? And how can I get more energy for myself? Unfortunately, the evilness of the question is, how do I get more energy for myself at the expense of other people? And very often the killing of innocent civilians. Now, what is this current form of soft war or non-kinetic war? Well, it's the fiat monetary empire. America's #1 export is inflation across the world. The United States prints dollars, numbers out of thin air, and they send it to the rest of the world. They send it to the Middle East, they send it to Latin America, they send it to Africa, they send it to wherever. They print the dollars, they send it to the rest of the world, and in exchange, get the resources. The America empire prints dollars and sends it to Africa so that we can get cobalt from Africa, or so that we can get oil from Venezuela, or so that we can get bananas from Hawaii and Guatemala and from elsewhere in the Caribbean, right? This is what we do. This is how we perpetuate war via indirect means, right? We won't go to war with you. We won't invade you. What we will do is we will print dollars and we will demand that you accept those dollars and have a dollarized standard. And if you don't, you have our military that will invade you and will be a threat to you. Even if not directly killing your people, we will have trade tariffs. We will impose trade taxes. We will weaken your economy. This is how America goes to war with countries without actually going to war with countries. Okay, and what does Bitcoin have to do with this? Well, Bitcoin comes in and it becomes a new form of war, a new form of energy competition and fighting for energy dominance. Instead of the ancient world, where nations would either go to war with each other directly via kinetic means or indirectly via monetary debasement and printing and shuffling around the accounting ledger of currency to extract more wealth from the self, the Bitcoin war, or in Jason's perception, the Bitcoin soft war, is that of everyone competing to create more electricity. How do you get more electricity in the future, how do you get more Bitcoin? You get more Bitcoin by producing more electricity than everyone else. Okay, in war, if you and your enemy are on equal terms, you win the war by taking energy from them and giving it to yourself, and that is how you become the global dominant power. Okay, in fiat currency, how do you win? It's a zero-sum game. You print dollars, you give the dollars to your enemy or your economic enemy, you get energy from them, and now you have the energy and you have strengthened the ability for you to print more dollars. You print more dollars, that is how you win in that zero-sum system. And the way it begins to inverse, the way it begins to collapse is that when people are no longer taking those dollars or giving you as much oil for those dollars. Literally just 2 days ago, the Saudis no longer officially now accept oil as the only form, or excuse me, no longer accept dollars as the only form of currency for their oil. Okay, so we're seeing this in real time, right? That the dollar is becoming weaker, and because it's becoming weaker, we're exchanging it for less and less resources from the rest of the world. So therefore, the dollar is getting weaker, etc. Increasing the feedback loop, right? And so Bitcoin's soft war is the idea that what if we could fight energy disputes across the planet without having to dump political currency on each other or go at war with each other with the barrel of a gun? What if instead we can compete with our enemy by, instead of taking energy from them and extracting it for ourselves in a zero-sum game, what if this was a non-zero-sum game where, okay, my new incentive is produce more electricity than you. That is how you re-incentivize war. So that my goal as a country and as a politician is to get more energy than my rivals. And the new way to do that is fight, and produce more electricity as fast as possible and increase and stabilize the power grid as fast as possible compared to, let's go take their oil. This is what we're looking at with soft war. We could be looking at in the long-term future of all these nations having a hash force, as Jason Lowry would describe it, fighting for more and more and more Bitcoin. And you might say $100 million Bitcoin is completely absurd, it's completely worthless, there's no way it's going to happen. I'm telling you, if these nations were to do this, $100 million Bitcoin is no longer absurd. In fact, it's reasonable, and it's absurd to think it will stop on $100 million of Bitcoin, because there is no price the government will put on being able to control Bitcoin hash and being able to control how much energy they're controlling, right? Or control how much energy they're trying to get, right? So this is what we're talking about here. And Donald Trump going out, talking on Truth Social about having Bitcoin and how it can accelerate American energy, that is the big deal, okay? I've been talking about this for literally years, and now we're actually seeing it happen, okay? We have less in common with the future than the past. This is something I talk about all the time, okay? We've had more change in the last 100 years than the previous 1,000 years before that, and I would argue we have more change in the next 100 years than the previous 1,000 years, okay? We have a lot of change in front of us, and this is the question that Jason asked in regards to this topic. If World War III were a soft war fought in, from, and through cyberspace, would we recognize it as World War III? Okay, a lot of people think that the Bitcoin people are pessimists or doomsdayers for talking about the reality of where we are. Okay, I'll talk about it again. 1944 and 45, the United States won World War II. We had the Bretton Woods Agreement. Okay, the communists, took over. America took over. Britain was in decline. Germany, of course, lost the war. America set the new monetary standard. Basically, we said we can print dollars for the rest of the world. And this gave America a huge advantage. The most prosperous advantage of this period was, of course, the 1950s, 1960s, and early 1970s, when the dollars that we had were worth the most. We could print the dollars, distribute it to the rest of the world, and we get energy back from them. But of course, this requires that we continue to print dollars indefinitely. Unfortunately, when we went off the gold standard in 1971, and since 1971, over the last 50 years, the dollar has been in decline, and now at a faster and faster decline. And time is not on our side as Americans. Okay, the more innovation occurs, the greater the incentive to dump dollars for that innovation. Okay, the more globalized we are, the greater the incentive for countries to go to the Russian ruble or the Chinese yuan or somewhere else in the world than the US dollar. Okay, that's the problem we face. And for historical context, 98% of the nation states or empires that reach 130% sovereign debt to GDP, which is what the United States reached in 2020, 98% of them no longer have the same debt structure within 15 years. Okay, that means hyperinflation, war, or default within 15 years. Historical precedents of a 98% chance. Now, I'm an American, I'm a pro-American, and I have an American bias, so I'm going to assume America has 10x better odds than the historical precedent, meaning still we have an 80% chance of this happening by 2035. Okay, maybe that's not literally going to happen. I don't know. Okay, I just know that there is a massive historical precedent for this, and all the incentives seem to be lining up. We are way too debt burdened, and this is not sustainable forever. If the system is fraudulent, it will end. People thought the FTX Ponzi scheme, people thought the FTX fraudulent system was going to go on forever, and it didn't. I remember saying this, FTX is going to end. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin. One day it is going to stop. And it did stop, and it did collapse in a very violent fashion. And probably the same thing is going to happen to US treasuries. The same thing is probably going to happen to US dollars. Does that mean hyperinflation? Very possibly, I would argue yes. Does that mean war? Very possibly, I would argue yes. However, I'm not a doomsdayer, and I would not call myself a doomsdayer, because my hope is that with technological innovation, aka this gunpowder thing in accordance to the bows and arrows, the best hope we have for America is adopting a Bitcoin standard. Why? Because it disincentivizes the trajectory towards kinetic war, and it incentivizes the trajectory towards a softer form of economic war that doesn't rely on taking money from others. Okay, it is better to have an economic war via printing money and debasement than a kinetic war with nuclear bombs and tanks and guns and bullets. Okay, what's even better than a debasement war is the soft war that Bitcoin proposes, giving people an economic incentive to produce electricity for monetary energy. Okay, and by the way, this is exactly what Nikola Tesla predicted in 1899. Okay, Nikola Tesla in 1899 and the 18 freaking hundreds, Nikola Tesla predicted this. Nikola Tesla described that the problem is, and this is his report. You can look it up. Okay, it's called the problem of increasing human energy. Okay, you can look it up and read the whole thing on Google. Okay, Nikola Tesla's thesis: humans are producing more and more energy, and there's going to be a point at which the weapons are so powerful that by using them, we are going to destroy the world, or at least a society using them, right? Essentially, nuclear weapons and all the modern weapons of today, right? That's essentially what Nikola Tesla is describing. And so Nikola Tesla describes a new principle of what Jason Lowry would call soft war, of basically fighting for energy dominance without the need for, in Tesla's words, bloodshed or screws. Basically, what Tesla means is that in the far future, or Tesla's far future, which is today, Tesla was describing, we need to fight a form of war in which it does not require the bloodshed of human beings or require the destruction of machines. We need a way to settle it in kind of a game of virtual chess. That is essentially what Bitcoin is today. That is why Bitcoin is a big deal. Yes, I'm not here to talk about Bitcoin number go up because the ETF's this and number that, blah, blah, blah. The long-term game of where we're eventually going with this is eventually states, corporations, individuals, and everywhere else on the planet, every other organization on the planet is basically competing in a massive digital chess game of who can control the most energy. Okay, and the one entity in that entire game that can print dollars out of thin air is the US government. Okay, as I mentioned before in this video, I'm very fortunate, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I'm very fortunate to be having dinner with Michael Saylor tomorrow. He invited me to dinner, myself and a few other people. Michael Saylor is rich. Michael Saylor owns a lot of Bitcoin. Michael Saylor has printed billions of dollars to buy Bitcoin via creating new fixed rate debt. Okay, he can do that to a certain extent. He can sell his shares to a certain extent. Okay, from January to April, he was selling about $4 million of MicroStrategy stock every single day to buy Bitcoin. Okay, Michael Saylor is rich, but Michael Saylor is not Donald Trump. Donald Trump could print $6 trillion in 2020 for the coronavirus lockdowns because it was perceived to be in America's best interest to intentionally destroy its own economy for 6 months. Because, of course, that has no impact on global famine and global energy production, right? There's no way that starving the third world is in any way worse than protecting the coddled American West. But, that's a whole other topic for another time. The point is, governments can print dollars to buy Bitcoin. Governments can print dollars to subsidize energy production for their grids, for stabilizing the grids, and ultimately go to Bitcoin. Am I in favor of governments printing dollars for it? No. Again, I'm just saying the game theory. If I'm a government, my incentive is to approve the ETF, allow as many Americans to buy the ETF as possible. And then when the time is right and the game theory is in my advantage and I'm willing to burn the metaphorical bridge to get to the other side, light the TNT, burn the bridge, confiscate the ETF, produce as much freaking electricity as possible, outcompete your enemies, okay? The number one way for us to outcompete China in this is to confiscate the ETF, get the Bitcoin on our balance sheet, and as fast as possible, produce more energy and electricity in China. Instead of going to war with them over Taiwan, instead of bombing them or sending our aircraft carriers over there, where we risk killing hundreds of millions of people and destroying ourselves and our own political energy, upgrade to the next thing and outcompete them in it, right? Again, gunpowder versus bows and arrows, okay? People, frankly, including many of us watching this, right? Us people that don't live in the realm of governments, that live in the realm of everyday average Joes, right? We look at Bitcoin, we think of it like an investment, okay, like a number go up thing. Governments are going to look at Bitcoin and they are going to view it as a national security issue. If we don't accelerate Bitcoin energy adoption and integration into our electric grid is going to be weaker than our enemies. Our electric grid is going to be more vulnerable to cyber attacks and physical attacks than our enemies. But we have to do everything possible to integrate Bitcoin mining and integrate Bitcoin energy to stabilize the grid, monetize the grid, and have as many renewable resources and a massive surplus to demand as possible. And those things are only possible with Bitcoin mining data centers. Okay, you can't do that with AI data centers. You can't do it with other forms of internet data centers. You have to do it with Bitcoin mining data centers. Okay, and this is the point that Jason Lowry's talking about. This is why I'm rambling. Yes, it's about Bitcoin number go up to $100 million, but it's about increasing the probability of a prosperous future and decreasing the probability of a future of war and conflict. And so this is the incredible idea, and this is why it's important that Donald Trump is talking about this, because it is game theory. Even Donald freaking Trump is now beginning to understand this, who is one of the ex-presidents that talked most about Bitcoin, is now coming out and talking the most positively about Bitcoin, okay? And Bitcoiners like myself believe World War III is coming. It has to come. America has been artificially manipulating the disparity of energy across the planet since 1944, and the world is pretty mad about it. Russia is pretty mad about it. China is pretty mad about it. They can pretend like they're not. We can all pretend like we're friends. But the reality is America has been printing dollars to dump onto the rest of the world for almost a century. And we have gone from having the computer being the size of a room with 4 megabytes to now having 4 terabyte hard drives and 4 terabyte computers. Okay, the world has dramatically progressed in energy. And those prosperity gains from that energy have not been equally distributed to where they should have been. Bitcoin is the new form of conflict. And if we want the best future possible, where World War III is inevitable because energy disputes of the fraudulent system are inevitable to reset, we should hope and pray and cross our fingers that that results in a soft form of war instead of a hard form of war, a digital form of energy settlement instead of a analog form of energy settlement. Okay, we have less in common with the future than the past. Okay, and here's the other thing too. Bitcoin is way bigger than people understand, right? Okay, people think that Bitcoin is in competition with gold. Like, oh, Bitcoin's digital gold. Wow, if Bitcoin's digital gold, well, Bitcoin's a $1.5 trillion asset. Gold's a $12 trillion asset. So that means that Bitcoin should go to $700,000 a coin because it's competing with gold, right? No. Again, that's like saying, oh, wow, gunpowder. Oh, gunpowder is really amazing. Gunpowder, if it has full adoption, it's going to be just as valuable as all the bows and arrows on the planet. No, gunpowder is way of a bigger deal than that. Okay, let's take the internet. Another example. Oh, wow, internet. Wow, the year's 1995. Internet is cool. I like internet. Internet is good. I am bullish internet. I'm going to buy internet and sell it when the total value of all the internet in the world is the same as all the radio in the world. because I'm a bullish person and I'm going to take my profits when we reach mass adoption, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you're not nearly bullish enough on the internet. The internet is a way, way, way bigger deal than radio. The internet is a way, way, way bigger deal than newspapers. Yes, everyone today uses radio and newspapers, but way more people tomorrow are going to be using internet. Okay, back in the day, back in the 20th century, way fewer people used radio and newspapers than today use the internet, right? And we're still early days internet. This is something I have to re-emphasize. The internet is only at 60% adoption today. We're only at 60% adoption for the internet, and yet you're watching this video on the internet, right? This is my point with Bitcoin. When Bitcoin is 60% global adoption, fiat is already probably going to be gone. Okay, we're at 60% internet adoption today. Okay, the pre-internet companies that didn't adopt the internet 20 years ago, they've been gone for 15 years. Okay, the same thing's probably going to happen with Bitcoin. It is ridiculous to assume that the US dollar is only going to hyperinflate once we're at like 95% adoption for Bitcoin. Like, oh, Bitcoin hyper-Bitcoinization, it's going to take 30 years or 40 or 50 years to get to 95% adoption, and then the dollar is going to hyperinflate. It's like, no, 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 no. The dollar is probably going to be, for most people, useless, and for most people are not going to be living on it way before we have mass Bitcoin adoption around the world. Okay, we could be looking at 15 or 20 or 25% Bitcoin adoption, and we could be seeing the beginnings of the end of dozens, if not 100 political currencies around the world. That's entirely possible, in my personal opinion. Okay, and that's just how these things work, right? By the time that many nation states are adopting a gunpowder standard, the bow and arrow and chariot and spear are already on their way out, collapsing in free fall, because every government is undermining their own military to adopt. And this is the other thing that has to be mentioned about game theory. If you are a nation that uses the horse standard, because the horse standard is cool, and the horse standard is what we've used for our cavalries and our militaries for thousands of years. The locomotive is a scam. The locomotive uses too much energy. The locomotive is destabilizing our energy systems, or blah, 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 or it's too expensive, whatever. By the time the nations realize, oh my goodness, we need the locomotive. Oh my goodness, how can the locomotive be a weapon of war? The locomotive's not a weapon of war, because what are you going to do? Build a bunch of rails and then send the train into, a line of enemies? That's ridiculous to say the locomotive's a thing of war, right? What are you doing? What are you talking about? You're a locomotive maxi. You're a locomotive hyper accelerationist. What are you talking about? Yes, everything's a weapon of war. All technology is a weapon of war, because we live in an imperfect world. Okay, the locomotive was a weapon of war. Yeah, sure, you're not going to ram a train into your enemies, obviously, idiot. But what you're going to do is you're going to use the train to move your troops faster. You're going to move the train. You're going to use the train to move your cannons faster. You're going to use the train to move food and rations faster. The nation that adopts the locomotive and national railway system is going to obviously benefit over the other empire that uses horses. Okay, and when nations realize this, their new incentive is, oh my goodness, let's adopt the locomotive as fast as freaking possible, and let's obsolete our horse military as fast as possible. Yes, we are destroying our own military, our current military, as fast as possible. However, in doing so, that loss we take is well worth the exponential benefit of being first to the locomotive era. Okay, this is why many nations won against many other nations in the late early 1900s, right? This is why, because they have better industry, they have better factories, they have better locomotives, they had better distribution and transportation systems, right? Even if they didn't have better weapons, they could move the energy they had across their nation more efficiently. This is what we're looking at with Bitcoin. We will debase our own political currency, our own dollar, to get and acquire and accelerate more Bitcoin. Okay, this is why Donald Trump has been so anti-Bitcoin for so long. Donald Trump has said, oh, Bitcoin's bad because I'm for a strong dollar, and people would clap. Donald Trump would say, I'm pro-America, I don't like Bitcoin, I'm neutral on it, but I want to see a strong dollar. Okay, Donald Trump very soon could potentially realize that the best case for a strong dollar is America adopting Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin and the dollar in competition? Yes, but by adopting Bitcoin, it actually strengthens the dollar. That's the crazy counterproductive thing. Is the horse and locomotive, are these things in competition? Yes. One of them is going to survive in the future, one of them is not. However, the nation that adopts the locomotive standard, ironically, has their horses be more valuable in their nation. That's the crazy thing. Their horses are more valuable against the other nation's horses, because now your horses can stand on a train and move to the front lines. That's the thing people don't understand about this Bitcoin and political currency and all this dynamic, is that, yes, by printing more money to accelerate energy production and to accelerate Bitcoin adoption and to buy Bitcoin in spot market. By doing those things, yes, you're weakening the dollar. However, you're sending your horses to the front line via a locomotive and therefore making your horses more valuable on the battlefield than your enemy's enemy's horses. That's what we're looking at here. That's what we're looking at with Bitcoin. That is what we're looking at with the United States eventually adopting Bitcoin. The United States will probably adopt Bitcoin way faster than people are ready to admit. Okay, again, it'll probably take many, many years. Okay, I'm not naively saying it's going to happen this November, the election cycle. You got to vote for Donald Trump. Blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, the game theory is happening and it is inevitable. It is going to continue, right? If you don't believe me, if you don't think Bitcoin's going up, if you don't think it's going to tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, again, I was saying these things years ago when Donald Trump was hating on Bitcoin. I was saying Bitcoin is going to $50,000. It's going to recover $15,000, $16,000. This is late 2022 I'm talking about. At the bottom of the market, I was telling people, this is a smash buy. You have to buy Bitcoin because it's going up indefinitely. Why? Because nation states eventually on a long enough time horizon are going to realize it's a weapon of war, soft war, and adopt it. And now we are seeing Donald Trump validate this game theory, if anything else. And that game theory is going to be worth way more than anything else in the past. Okay, this conceptual chart I have here is a visual representation of what I've been trying to articulate this entire video, is that people think that Bitcoin, which is the bottom left little tiny orange line, people think the addressable market for that is only of gold, which is the yellow line, which is a $10 trillion asset. And you have to realize, no, it's way bigger. Bitcoin is not just competing against gold as a dominant store of value. It is also competing as a medium of exchange and a unit of account, which is the blue bar, which is the US Treasury market, okay? The gold equitable comparison is $700,000 per Bitcoin, okay? The Treasury market is a $1.5 million Bitcoin. I would argue actually it's significantly higher than the 1.5 million dollar Bitcoin. I would argue it's significantly higher because the Treasury market is going to continue to expand exponentially into the future because America is not having nearly enough bonds to service the future expense. So in reality, that blue bar is probably millions of dollars per Bitcoin. But the big red arrow you're looking at, what I'm pointing at is that peach colored bar, the big one to the right, is that Bitcoin is way bigger than all those things combined. Bitcoin is not just a store of value like gold, it is a store of value better than gold. Bitcoin is not just a store of value like the American stock market, it is a better store of value than the American stock market or the American NASDAQ. Okay, Bitcoin is not just a medium of account or unit of exchange or medium of exchange like the US Treasury market, US dollars. No. It's way bigger than those. And what happens when you have the same technology absorbing all of these things combined, it becomes hyper exponentially more valuable. Okay, the internet is not just a communications, an audio communication system like radio. It is way more. Okay, the internet is not only a video streaming platform like television. It is way more. Okay, the internet is not going to have 13 channels like you have on TV in the late 20th century. Oh, and also 40 radio stations like you have in the late 20th century. No, it's going to have 100 million podcasts, 1 billion videos, and 1 trillion posts on Reddit and Twitter and other, and Facebook and other social media, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Okay, the internet is worth way more than all the things combined. It's like saying, oh, the internet is going to stop appreciating in value in 10 or 15 years because now it is reached parity with the radio market cap or with radio company cash flows, right? It's absolutely absurd. The internet is way more valuable than all these former technologies combined. Gunpowder is way more valuable than radios, multiplied by spears, multiplied by slingshots, multiplied by this and that, okay? Gunpowder is worth way more because you can channel way more energy and do way more with gunpowder than you can do with those things, okay? And this is why $700,000 per Bitcoin is not bullish. You're only pricing it against gold, which is an inferior technological thing to Bitcoin. $1.5 million, and I would argue probably, again, we're talking maybe $2, $3, $5 million, Treasury market, I'm talking here with Safety and Moose's point, that is not bullish. It is significantly more. And all these people, including Jason Lowry, including Safety and Moose, including myself, including many other people in Bitcoin that actually understand Bitcoin from the technologist perspective and not Bitcoin as a trade perspective, are this extremely bullish of hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, most people are anti-Bitcoin. And most of the people that are pro-Bitcoin think Bitcoin could go to $1 million someday. Or it could go to a couple $1 million someday. No. No. And these people, unfortunately, are buying Bitcoin on exchanges and thinking they're going to sell it and take profits at some point. When in reality, they're going to have their Bitcoin confiscated because they don't actually understand what's going on here. So hopefully, this whole discussion about Donald Trump being this openly bullish Bitcoin has been useful to you. Hopefully that's been really insightful for you. Okay. Now, what are we talking about here in terms of multiples? Okay. At the time of recording, the price of Bitcoin in terms of dollars, in terms of America's political currency unit, is $67,200. The price in euro, which I'm currently in Euro land right now here in Prague and the Czech Republic, the current price here, well, more or less it is. It kind of is that you can use euros or anyway. Political currency shenanigans. Point is, euros. It's obviously a bit different. The yen, obviously, in nominal terms, it's way more. We're looking at over 10 million yen per Bitcoin and Bitcoin yuan, about 500,000 in nominal terms. Right. My point is saying unit bias, right? Like Bitcoin's already 10 million in yen. Why? Because the yen is going down forever against Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin at $100 million is not absurd because we're already at 10 million nominal price in Japan, which is the fourth largest economy and central bank of the world. I mean, like, come on, right? In nominal terms, Bitcoin is going up forever, and also in real terms, also, if you believe humans are always going to be more productive in the future. And oh, by the way, Bitcoin's down 4% in the last 24 hours. Okay, Donald Trump, an ex-president of the United States, has come out and talked positive about Bitcoin, and the market is so young, the market is so irrational, the market is so ignorant and naive and misunderstanding what this thing is. The market is down 4%. Oh my goodness, people. What on earth is wrong with you? People are complete idiots. And I love the people. The people are great, but unfortunately, we are all idiots, including myself, because we cannot understand or conceive the technologies of tomorrow priced in terms of today. And so if Bitcoin is to go to $100 million, if Bitcoin is to be adopted by the nation states and by political hash forces, and countries print their own legal tender for Bitcoin, that is a 1,470x compared to today. Now we're talking, now we're getting to actual numbers that actually make sense, okay? A 5x for the internet from here in the year 1995 does not make sense. A 1,000x from the internet from here in 1995 makes perfect sense, okay? A $100 million Bitcoin makes way more sense than a $20,000 Bitcoin. And if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy Bitcoin, that's my reminder to you. You might be waiting for it to dip down to $55,000 or $45,000, or I'll buy when it goes to $22,000. People are still talking like this. And I got to again and again and again remind them, a $1 million Bitcoin at this point makes way more sense than a $15,000 Bitcoin again. If you're waiting for it to go down a bit more, it might, but I'm sorry, it's probably not. Okay, that's my encouragement. That's my reminder. Don't sit on the sidelines. You can smash by the internet in the year 1995. You can smash by gunpowder a mere 20 years before all the empires and kings of the world realize they can use gunpowder for cannons. Right now, most governments are laughing at gunpowder, and they're going to realize really quickly when they see other nations doing this, they're going to follow suit. Okay, what do you think is going to happen when Donald Trump, if Donald Trump, begins to do this? Okay, every other nation follows suit. Okay, America is the big dog. American is the monetary empire. If we do this, and if we begin striking Bitcoin, all these other nations are going to follow suit. Maybe this takes 20 years to unfold from today. Okay, maybe the timer started today with Donald Trump posting this. Okay, even if it did start today, I'm not saying it did. It still might take decades. But in those decades, you're going to be looking at something way more like this. You're not going to be looking at a 5x or a 10x. You're going to be looking at literal 1,000x moves in nominal terms of Bitcoin's price, because that is how significant Bitcoin is from an economic perspective, from a monetary perspective, and from a national security perspective. Okay, Michael Saylor himself last year in Prague at this conference in 2023 talked about how Bitcoin could do a 500x in purchasing power. That is a $15 million Bitcoin from the current price at that time. And I personally believe Michael Saylor is way more bullish in private than he is in public, because there are certain things he just can't say on stage, frankly. And so this is the tweet Michael Saylor posted in regards to the Donald Trump news. We want all the remaining Bitcoin to be made in the USA. Now, I was in Portugal back in March. Michael Saylor was on stage talking about Bitcoin. We were in the gold rush era. Let me emphasize this. There are 1% of the Bitcoins left to be mined in the year 2034. Okay, let me emphasize that again. The next 10 years, from 2024 to 2034, we have a couple more percent of the Bitcoins being mined. By the year 2034, only 1% of the Bitcoins will be left. Okay, let's say nation-state adoption takes at least another 10 years to get going. Okay, we could be sitting in 2034 at perhaps a $5 million Bitcoin, literally a 500x or whatever, or that would be a, what would that be? That would be a 100x would be 7 million. So, okay, let's say 7 million. Let's say 10, 15 years from now, we're sitting at $7 million per Bitcoin, a mere 100x from a, let's say 50x in adoption, right? Maybe we go from 0.5% to maybe 5% adoption or something like that. And now we're looking at, $7 million per Bitcoin about 10 years from now, more or less. It's our prediction. I'm just saying it's a theoretical. What if we had a 25x in adoption, a 50x in price, nominal price, $7 million? That's still early, people. That's still early. Because in 2034, now we only have 1% of the coins left to be mined, left to be issued in the network. And now, 10 years from now, we are truly beginning nation-state adoption. Even in the next 10 years, are ramping up, preparing for mega-state national adoption. Then in 2034, I will be making this video. Bitcoin will be $7 million. The people in the comments will be saying, oh my goodness, Bitcoin's a bubble. Oh my goodness, Bitcoin's a scam. Oh, I'm too late to Bitcoin. I can't afford one Bitcoin. Oh my goodness, I don't know. And they'll be in the comments crying. And I'll still be saying and sitting here, Bitcoin is $7 million in the year 2034 is mega cheap because we have all of these nation states coming and they're all going to be producing way more electricity than you can possibly imagine. They're all going to be now incentivized to build as many nuclear facilities as possible, to incentivize building as many energy efficient means as possible. Right now in America, we are building solar farms and wind farms as fast as possible. We are not doing it efficiently. We are not doing it productively. But now with Bitcoin, we're incentivized in the year 2034 to build more and more efficient energy. It's like you're taking profits in 2034 at $7 million per Bitcoin. What on earth are you doing? You're crying to yourself that you didn't buy Bitcoin at $70,000 10 years ago when I was begging you to buy at $70,000. It's like, what's wrong with you? Okay, it's still cheap at $7 million in 2034 because we only have 1% of the coins left to go, and all the nation-state adoption and all of the nation-state energy integration is ahead of us. And all these nations are going to begin printing their own legal tender for Bitcoin because by introducing the locomotive age and obsoleting the horse age, they actually make their horses more powerful on the trajectory down that they're going anyway, right? Even though horses are on the way out, adopting the locomotive is the best thing we can do for our horse to make it as militaristically advantageous as possible. The same thing is true with Bitcoin. In the year 2034, even if no nation in the next 10 years has a hash force or mines Bitcoin, and that very well could be changing here because we have Donald Trump talking about this, and obviously I know Bhutan is mining Bitcoin in Oman. That's a separate note. America is obviously a much bigger empire. The point is, there is no top for Bitcoin. Okay, and if you think a $500,000 Bitcoin is bullish, you are not bullish enough. If you think a $5 million Bitcoin is bullish, you are not bullish enough. You don't understand the implications of Bitcoin on national security. You're looking at Bitcoin only as a means of never go up, only as a means of hopium, only as a means of GameStop, quick buck making. You're not viewing it as the form of global World War III. And I'm not saying that as a pessimist. I'm not saying that as a genocidal maniac. I'm saying that because the best hope we can have is transition from an era with bows and arrows and from an era of kinetic violence to an era of soft conflict, where one that is not a zero-sum game, one that is a non-zero-sum game, where it requires more energy production, not less energy production. So please, if you think you're too late to Bitcoin, if you have cash on the sidelines, know what you're doing. Know the risk you're taking. You are being fully exposed to Kodak, Barnes & Noble, and Sears, where we are on the precipice of mass internet adoption, accelerated and fueled by government debasement of their own political currency, and in irony, strengthening their own political currency in the process. Do I believe Donald Trump understands all this? No. Do I believe Donald Trump knows anything about Bitcoin's blockchain or knows anything about her work? I significantly doubt it. However, literally in the last 36 hours of recording this video, in the last 36 hours, I highly believe Donald Trump has learned the most about Bitcoin, because obviously in the last 24 hours, Donald Trump had these meetings with the miners, 48 hours ago, Donald Trump knew none of this. Now here we are, and he understands 1% of this, By the time he is up for re-election in November back in America, maybe he'll know 5% of this, And if he's reelected, maybe he won't be. Maybe Kennedy or someone else will be elected. Oh, and by the way, Kennedy's also very pro-Bitcoin. Kennedy's going to be speaking at the Bitcoin conference. It's like people have way too short time horizons. They are ignoring the fact of the trajectory. They're ignoring the fact of the game theory, Everything I'm describing is happening literally in real time here, And so anyway, I'm so excited to be having dinner with Michael Saylor tomorrow. I'm sure we're going to talk about this. I'm sure it's going to come up. Saylor's probably not watching this, but the people on his team that made this work, thank you. You're probably watching this. I appreciate the support of everyone watching this. Please like and subscribe and all that wonderful stuff to the video, of course. And then if you want to buy Bitcoin, please buy it via River or via another exchange that actually cares about you. Okay, the reason I use River, the reason I talk about River, and the reason I'm shouting them out at the end of the video here is because River has a couple really, really useful things. River has River has white glove service. If you use the link in the description below, where you get a call center. Okay, if the United States, you have a person on the phone to talk to. Okay, if you're having trouble connecting your bank account or you're trying to figure out how this works, you're having trouble with the app, you have literal phone service to help you. Okay, so that is a huge, huge benefit. And also they have full reserves. Okay, River is not trusting Coinbase with their coins. Okay, the ETFs are trusting Coinbase. Okay, I was at dinner last night here in Prague. I had dinner with one of the first 10 employees at Coinbase. Okay, really, really funny guy, really passionate guy. And oh my goodness, people, you would not believe the stories of the early Coinbase days. Okay, and I've heard this from multiple people. Okay, stories from Coinbase are absolutely disastrous, absolutely awful, right? And so if you're buying a Bitcoin ETF, you're fully trusting Coinbase. Okay, BlackRock and Coinbase do not actually make on-chain transactions for their Bitcoin. It's all off-chain. It's all as a promissory note between each other. So please, wherever you're buying Bitcoin, buy it from the place that you think has the highest probability of actually being one-to-one with their Bitcoin reserves, okay? And River, in my opinion, is one of the safest exchanges at which you can do this. Do not go to a sketchy exchange. Do not go to FTX. Do not go to Coinbase. Go to a legit exchange where they have a reputation, they have a track record, and they care about you as much as you care about your Bitcoin. So click the link in the description below if you want to buy more Bitcoin. If you want to smash buy Bitcoin in the news of Donald Trump, smash buying Bitcoin in the news of Donald Trump being anti-CBDC and pro-Bitcoin is something that's fun to do. So smash buy via the link in the description below. And even if you already have a Bitcoin exchange, it's always a good idea to have multiple Bitcoin exchanges, okay? Because you never know when the off-ramp is going to be cut out, right? And one more note about that. Even once you buy your Bitcoin on exchanges, you have to take it off exchanges. And so, of course, as always, take your multi-sig setup seriously, okay? I'm here talking about multi-sig nonstop, repeatedly in all these videos, and most people are still ignoring it, okay? There are maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people like me a few years from now that are going to be Bitcoin educators and Bitcoin assistants, helping people do these very technical things. Okay, let's say 5 years from now, there's 3,000 people like me helping people do this, right? Inheritance plan, tax planning, UTXO management, multi-sig setup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think is going to happen when we have 3,000 politicians 5 years from now that want this? What do you think is going to happen when we have 300,000 millionaires want this 5 years from now? What do you think is going to happen when we have 3 million everyday people that want this, just trying to protect their retirement? Okay, I am begging you, please click the link in the description below and set up your Bitcoin multi-sigs now. Even if you don't use it yet, even if you're scared, even if it's complicated, please just do it. Or please at least take the first step. The first step is always the hardest. Please just do it. Because if you don't, probably in the not so distant future, 5, 10 years from now, you're going to look at the reality. And the reality is, oh my goodness, my Bitcoin has gone from being worth $70,000 a coin to $5 million a coin. I don't have my tax planning set up properly. I have questions about my inheritance planning. What happens when I die? Oh yeah, what about my UTXOs? I hope I got that settled. And oh, what about this? What about this? You're going to realize I need help. I need a service to walk me through all these things. And now all of a sudden, as all service businesses are, the demand is way higher than supply. Okay, right now, we're not in that period. Okay, yes, we've grown from a team of 5 to a team of 40 people at the Bitcoin Advisor last year alone. But my point is, please do these things now. Please click the link in the description below to buy Bitcoin via River or whatever exchange you particularly trust. And also take self-custody of your coins. If your coins are on exchanges, you do not own real Bitcoin. It's inevitable. Somebody will take your Bitcoin for you. Maybe a scammer, maybe the government, but somebody will take it and it won't be you. So please buy Bitcoin, do it quickly, get it off exchanges. And if and when you do that, please consider having a multi-sig vault, a collateral custody multi-sig vault set up as well. In particular, one where you are also not the single point of failure. Most multi-sig vaults have single points of failure. Set up one that doesn't have a single point of failure. So link to all these things in the description below. As always, I appreciate your time. I thank you. I'm only here at Prague because of you guys and because of the support. Please subscribe. Please like the video, share it with your friends. I'm recording lots and lots of interviews while I'm here in Prague. It's going to be a blast, and it's going to be great. So thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe. See you next time.